Hey, friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Ask WrestleJuice. You guys left a bunch of great questions. Some of them are a little outside of the norm, to be honest with you. But first up, we're going to go to our good old friend, editor extraordinaire, musician extraordinaire, the Observer, who says, what's next for CM Punk now that he's in Impact Wrestling? And he says he thinks there's a 90% chance this question is gonna get ignored because it's not gonna happen. But then also, Stone8935 says, what do you make of the tweets that USA Network have been making teasing CM Punk? So if you guys haven't been paying attention, USA Network social media person keeps on making references to CM Punk in like Instagram comments and stuff like that. And it got a lot of people thinking, what does this mean something? Then on top of that, for more Punk news, since we didn't really do a Punk Daily over at the other channel, apparently Ace Steel, CM Punk's best friend and trainer, landed a gig with Impact Wrestling, according to PW Insider. And by the way, this is from Cultaholic. This Cultaholic's reporting on the PW Insider article on Twitter. Former AEW producer Ace Steel is set to work tonight's Impact Wrestling Bound for Glory pay-per-view as a producer. He's reportedly been on Impact's radar for a while, with the company wanting to hire him before his AEW return. Well, yeah, they're going to hire him because they think that it might be a gateway to CM Punk. They're going to try to land CM Punk. And then, of course, there was a report that CM Punk was offered, an actual offer went to CM Punk to come work Impact. So, you know, this is one of those things where I'll believe it when I see it. I think it would actually be really cool, like really cool for CM Punk to work Impact, simply because, I don't know, it'd be kind of like, pun intended, I guess, or not intended, be kind of a Punk thing to do. Like Impact is the little company that would. They've been around forever. They've survived different ownership scenarios, different management scenarios. They had a really stinky reputation for a period of time, and now they seem to be on good terms and still forging relationships with other companies in a positive manner. I mean, they've got apparently like new TV production stuff. They've got, you know, decent names coming through because there's so much talent out there. I think it would be really cool for CM Punk to do Impact. I don't think he's going to do it. I would be shocked if he did, but I don't know. Look, CM Punk alone, I think it's sort of been proven, like ratings viewership wise, is basically a walking Impact Wrestling when it comes to how many views they get on their show. So I don't know, if you bring in the CM Punk people to the people that are in Impact, you basically double up their numbers. I think that'd be kind of cool. I think they should do it, or I think he should do it. It's all up to him, obviously. Impact will probably go out of their way to offer as much money as possible because they know that he might not just double their views, but maybe even triple them, which would still be, you know, at that point, maybe on par with Collision. I don't know, like Collision on a bad week, around 300,000, because I don't think Impact does very well. So I don't know. He would clearly have like full and complete creative freedom to do basically whatever he wanted to do. I don't know that there would be very many personality conflicts because he would be not just one alpha amongst other alphas like Moxley, Danielson, the Elite, et cetera, et cetera. It would just be Punk. It would be the Punk show. He would have an entire wrestling promotion just for himself. And I don't know that that would result in very many personality conflicts. And Impact Wrestling has not, to my knowledge, really worked all that much with AEW in the past. So I'm sorry, in the recent history. So I don't know that they would worry about burning bridges with AEW, similar to the way that I guess New Japan might be worried about burning bridges with AEW if they did offer Punk a deal. So, I mean, besides the major thing here with Impact and with anybody else, besides like, so I've always theorized that CM Punk might find that there would be some amount of cool factor in going over to Japan and working for Pro Wrestling Noah. Like, I think that's a possibility if the money was good enough. I just think that he wouldn't feel that there's that sort of buzz factor. It would feel like he is settling on like third best, because you got like, or maybe even fourth best if he considers New Japan as a possibility. But I don't think New Japan's going to do that so as not to piss off AEW. They've got a good thing going on over there. So, man, I don't know. Like, if he went there, I would love to see it. I would start watching Impact again. I would, just because I think that would be such an interesting scenario to see how it all plays out. But yeah, I mean, look, if you look at the lineup that they got over at Impact, they got a lot of really good wrestlers over there. And there's a lot of interesting matches for him over there in terms of simply like simple in-ring stuff. Having his own, sort of say over what happens there creatively, not just for himself, but he would probably have stroke amongst like the entire company. If he wanted, to start booking the X division or the Knockouts division, I'm sure he could probably do that if he wanted to. As opposed to AEW when there's a couple more cooks in the kitchen there. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen because I think he would feel it is too much of a step down. That being said, them hiring Ace Steel is a very, very cunning move on their part. And you never know. Maybe he'd be like, you know what? Fuck it. Seems like it could be fun. Let's go ahead and prove that I can be, that my reputation that I've got right now is much ado about nothing. And let's go ahead and do it. Maybe he would do that. Let me try to lift up Impact. Let me show that I'm trying to help people build something. And, WWE don't want him. AEW can't work with him anymore. New Japan can't work with him. I'm sure the dude has enough money to just basically do nothing, or to, when I say nothing, I mean nothing in the wrestling business. I don't mean doing nothing. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who wants to do nothing. He might write comic books. He might act again once the strike is over, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff. He could write his memoir. Does he ever do a book? I don't think he did a book. He should do a book. That'd be something else from his perspective. Anyways, so thank you, Rob Zerver. Thank you, Stone8935. As far as the tweets from USA Network and the Instagram comments, I don't for a second think that the digital team, the social media team at USA Network, has any idea in terms of what his contract negotiation status or lack thereof would be with WWE. I don't think they do. I think that they are simply trying to do what they're getting paid to do, and that is get engagement their way to their accounts. That is their job. And until they hear otherwise from WWE, I don't see that changing. I think eventually, especially post Survivor Series, I think WWE might try to play this both ways. I think they might try to a degree tease CM Punk with the understanding that their product is so hot right now that their show, Survivor Series, can be so much, it could be so good that nobody in the end is going to care that he doesn't show up. But there's no harm in like keeping that as an option or teasing something that doesn't end up happening, because the crowd's going to be happy with what happens there anyways. Randy Orton is probably going to end up coming back at Survivor Series. That's the current reports on that anyways. So I think it's much ado about nothing. I would imagine if WWE didn't want them to do that, they'd probably put a halt to that really, really quickly. And maybe this week we'll see that. I don't know. I don't know how long they're going to go with this. Let's go with some other questions here. Nobody says, with rumors that Jade Cargill will face Charlotte at Mania, do you think they'd put Jade over? Yeah. Yes. She will go on an undefeated streak. She will absolutely go on an undefeated streak. Yeah. Let's see here. Next question from Raz.gg says, where can LA Knight go after his match with Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel, seeing that he may not win the match? He's not going to win the match. Maybe after Saudi Arabia would be more time to develop his character motivation post Roman, or immediately get the U.S. champ around Survivor Series or Royal Rumble. I think he's gonna. I think Logan Paul's gonna beat Rey Mysterio for the U.S. title, and he's gonna hold it till WrestleMania, and that's where LA Knight's gonna win it. Sam Mark Harrison says, do you think Billy Corgan is a good wrestling owner with NWA? And what 90s alt-rock person would you want to run a wrestling business with? So evidently NWA just signed a deal with like the CW. I'll sort of make my judgment. I'll offer up my opinion on that once I see what the deal is, when it's going to be scheduled to air, what kind of promotion they're going to get behind it. Larson and I had some off-camera conversations about that he made me laugh with. But yeah, I don't know. I think the NWA is still a thing. It's more relevant now than it's been in probably, 30, 40 years or whatever. So I think that's a good thing. I think it's awesome for him that he's able to, have his own promotion that historically the oldest American promotion, pretty much. So yeah, I think it's awesome. I mean, I don't watch it, but I've seen they've got some good talent, but I also just have had zero interest in watching Tyrus as their champion. Like I don't see anything in the Funkasaurus, man. I see change the channel bathroom break in that guy, and that's who he made his top champion when he had a ton of other people there he could have used. But he went with a guy who I guess has a following on Fox News. Sam also says, what 90s alt-rock person would you want to run a wrestling business with? Probably Jerry Cantrell. I was a huge Alice in Chains fan. Seems like a cool guy, I think. I like some of his solo work. I mean, I was a huge Chris Cornell fan, so that would have been my first answer. Obviously, he's passed, and that's really sad. But I guess it'd be Jerry Cantrell. Eddie Vedder, I don't know. He seems a little heavy. And I if he was like, hey, Steve, what song do you like off of Lightning Bolt or whatever our last one was? I'd be like, I don't know, man. I don't listen to your stuff anymore. No, I haven't since like 98, but I really liked their first couple albums. They were my shit back then. Lord Blake, OB, says, do you think fans aren't trying as hard to push women's wrestling in AEW as they should to get results? The amount of energy being spent towards pushing it now is nowhere near as close to what it was in 2014 and 2015. There's a big reason for that, Lord Blake OB. It's because there wasn't another option back in 2014 and 2015. And right now, WWE, they make use of their women's division. It's not perfect, but they do a decent job with it. No, I think the thing about AEW fans not pushing for women's wrestling is that there are too many other places you can get women's wrestling. So AEW fans aren't fans of women's wrestling in general. You will see signs out in the audience. People hold up, say, bring, more women's wrestling, please. But by and large, if you're going to spend your money on a wrestling event, if you're going to spend your money on something and you're a fan of women's wrestling and that's what you want to watch, you're not going to go to an AEW show. So that crowd there is not there for women's wrestling. If they are, it's weird because they just don't focus on that. There's like one women's match per episode of TV. So that's not what that crowd is there for. And that's why that crowd is not pushing for women's wrestling. That's why they go to the bathroom during the women's matches. I mean, anecdotally speaking, a lot of people have said that. It's probably why it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Tony Khan didn't make an effort with them in the beginning. Their numbers were not where the other, where he is focusing his efforts. And so he says to the women, you're not performing in the ratings and stuff. So like, you're not going to get a lot of time. That's just what it is. The fans of AEW in general, just are not fans of women's wrestling, or they don't go there for women's wrestling because they don't have women's wrestling there. So it's just sort of like a cycle, So that's going to be why. Because why spend the energy on putting it there when you can just watch Stardom or, WWE or NXT, or Impact Wrestling. There's a ton of other places for that. Dream Crazy says, who in your mind in wrestling today is a wrestler with great promo skills and should be a manager in the future? The answer is Sami Zayn. I think Sami Zayn one day, if I get the feeling that once Sami Zayn is done wrestling, he will probably, it wouldn't shock me to see him spend all his time on his humanitarian efforts, which are, by the way, pretty awesome. But if he wanted to remain there and keep the platform to better those humanitarian efforts, oh, dude, he's going to be a manager. That guy is going to be an all-time. I think he could be like a Bobby the Brain Heenan type manager. I think he could be amazing if he wanted to. Let's see here. But then he's also the kind of guy who might wrestle until he's 60 and might not retire from in-ring stuff until, so I don't know. But I think Sami Zayn could be a killer manager if he wanted to be. Deadpool Nerd says, do you think pro wrestling can ever become a cultural phenomena the way it was in the late 90s? Or was it just a case of right attitude, right culture, right era? Sabanistic actually has a pretty decent answer here. Says, almost nothing will be a cultural phenomena like in the late 90s. He says, the most recent huge craze was the Barbenheimer trend, and many people my age in their early 20s had never heard of it. With social media and the likes, algorithms are catered to what people already enjoy. So if someone's already a fan of wrestling, it'll be hard for them to get into it. I actually have kind of a different take on that, although I agree with this stuff. There's too much competition these days. If you think about just how many more things there are now to occupy our entertainment hours, it is ridiculous. compared to where it was in the 1990s. That's why whenever I see like a movie, coming soon to theaters, like I saw the latest John Cena trailer for something called, it was so generic. I don't remember what it was called, but apparently he's like protecting somebody. It's like an action comedy. I looked at it and I was like, nobody's going to watch that movie. It doesn't look like that. It doesn't stand out. It's got a generic name. It's got a generic premise. You really have to stand out. There are no cultural phenomena. When's the last time that a song took over like the national zeitgeist? You know what I mean? Like, okay, I get it. Taylor Swift, she's a big deal. I'm old. I'm like in my mid 40s, but people in their mid 40s back in the 80s and 90s, they knew what like the number one songs out on the market were. And that went all the way down to teenagers. Like it was the same. It was a cultural phenomena across like generations. That's how it was back in the day. It ain't like that anymore. I look up and down like the Billboard music charts. I have no idea what half of these songs are nor like who these artists are. That's totally fine. It's not geared towards me because I've got my own thing because of what Sabanistic is talking about here. How like the algorithm feeds me like basically Jerry Cantrell solo material, right? Now it's definitely going to because I've said his name twice and my iPhone's sitting here. It's heard me, so now that's all I'm going to get. So like it's pop culture is so different now. It is fundamentally changed to cater to or favor basically like very specific genre stuff. Nothing is massive. Everything is genre. So no, I don't think anything can be a pop culture phenomena unless it's like, I don't know, the Endgame, or like a new Harry Potter or something that's already like become a massive deal. Like every once in a while, like Barbie was kind of that. And as he said, Oppenheimer was kind of that because that was sort of, they used each other to sort of market each other at the same time because they were being released in the same day. So no, I don't think it can, but I don't think anything can. Like it's very rare for anything to do that. And I don't think pro wrestling is going to be that thing. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Shrapnel Sponge. This is a loaded question. What is your biggest gripe with AEW and WWE? He says his biggest is Tony Khan's inability to take lemons and make lemonade. Like when Moxley got injured and dropped the Atlantic title, the international title. And it goes straight back on Orange Cassidy, who had dropped it after an amazing one-year title run. I wish Tony would just let things breathe and see where to go next. My biggest gripe with AEW is their inability to create interesting stories. Pro wrestling is a very unique animal. I've said this a million times in Going in Raw, probably here too. Pro wrestling is a very unique form of entertainment, especially when you dive into weekly wrestling television. It's very unique. Vince McMahon found a really great formula for monthly pay-per-views and weekly television all feeding into each other. That formula went to shit when he got super old over the past couple of years, but Triple H knows the formula. And he knows it really well. And that's why I think the last couple of months of TV have been pretty good with WWE, and I think they're just going to get better. Pretty excited about the lack of Vince McMahon. So my biggest problem with AEW, and I firmly believe that when Cody was there, Cody understood what that language was. And that's why there is a difference between AEW now and AEW when Cody was around, because I think Cody Rhodes was sort of Tony Khan's guide through all that. But he's gone, obviously, now. And Tony Khan is booking the show himself. He's already admitted to working 80-hour weeks, and it just doesn't work. Bottom line is you need people there making the decisions, not just hiring them, because he has people who know how to do it. Not just hiring them, but making the decisions as to how to start a feud, engage with that feud, and then finish that feud off. There have been so many drop balls in AEW with stories just falling by the wayside, characters, acting, bizarrely out of character. It's just, he doesn't understand how to book weekly wrestling television from a storyline perspective. You will always have that same number of people coming just to see the fun matches, because there are always good matches, but those matches become more and more meaningless when you don't have good stories behind them. That's my biggest gripe with AEW. My biggest gripe with WWE is, for as fantastic as NXT is, the presentation looks like absolute shit. I don't know what they would need to do to tailor it more to what I like, and maybe they don't give a shit about me. I'm outside the demographic that they want. They want to get the 18 to 39 demo. But yeah, I think it looks like dog shit, and that's why I don't follow NXT, because I can't stand to watch it. It just doesn't look good. Let's see here. Josh Perez says, with Io retaining over Charlotte and a report of management loving her reign, and they see her as a top name. I didn't see that report, but I think that's awesome if it's true. How long do you see Io's reign lasting? I think she'll probably end up losing it. Ah, man, I don't know. I could see Jade versus Charlotte being for the title at WrestleMania, so Io would probably have to lose it sometime between now and then. I forget what the match is at Saudi Arabia. Is it the triple threat again? I don't know what it is. But, yeah, I don't know. Io's going to lose it to somebody between now and or at Mania. I think it'll be between now and Mania. I'd love for it to be longer, but there's just too many. There are too many big names in the women's division. They have really stacked that thing, and so they do need to relieve some of that pressure for stories and stuff. They need to have something new for people to fight over. Taker Canaanite says, do you think that if Logan Paul was to win the U.S. title, would it be good or a bad thing for the title and the company as a whole? I don't know. They don't really do a lot with it, so why not, right? Like, Gunther's holding down the mid-card title on Raw with the Intercontinental Championship. The U.S. title, they didn't do anything with it with Austin Theory. They're not really doing much with it with Rey Mysterio. Have Logan Paul win it. Why not? Have him take it on his podcast, and then he can drop it at the Rumble or at WrestleMania to to LA Knight. Alan Martinez says, percentage-wise, how much do you think Cody will win the Royal Rumble again in 2024? He says 50%. I'm going to go with 80%. I think he's the guy to win it. Masked Man says, do you see Triple H using and relying less on nostalgia when it comes to booking? Yes, I do. I'm trying to speedrun some of these so I can get them all in. Tay Sosa says, I'm a big fan of both AEW and WWE. At times they could both be a little brain-racking, but I don't totally discredit the storylines that are presented. Just wait to see what happens. Minus backstage issues, why do people always find a reason to simply write AEW off? I think because they've dropped the ball on a lot of stories. Well, I do think there is a fairly decently large contingent on social media, or at least a loud, if not large, contingent on social media that simply is anti-AEW. There's nothing you could do about that. They just don't like that there's another company out there. I don't know what the deal is. It's weird to me. And I think because those are like the arguments you see that are just completely and totally disingenuous. I think there's plenty of people who look at their product and say, where's the women's wrestling? Or you look at the product and say, where are the black wrestlers? You look at the product and you see, okay, another Young Bucks match. I've seen this before. Where's the story? I think there are some legitimate problems with AEW. I've outlined them earlier in this episode. In terms of writing them off, once they show that they can sort of compete on a product level with WWE, especially WWE now, I think they'll be less likely to write them off. But yeah, I think that's probably why. I think there's always going to be that disingenuous sort of argument that people will make. Oh, they're too botchy, they're too this, they're too that, when it's just like, no, that's not really the case. But they are not without their problems, and WWE is doing really good right now. So I think if Vince McMahon had never let Triple H back in charge, and he had never had the investigations against him and never left, and was still booking the show himself, it was still dog shit like it was back in like 2019, 2020, then I think people would be much more into AEW. Because AEW was created as an alternative to WWE because WWE was so bad at the time. You go back to 2019, main roster WWE, it was bad. It was not good at all. So, yeah, that's what I think. Let's see here. A couple more questions. Bucket Dipper says, what's a Jeff Jarrett dream match you'd like to see for the prestigious Texas Chainsaw Massacre World Championship? I think it's obvious. You do Nick Gage versus Jeff Jarrett. Heel Heat says, would you and Larson consider turning Ace Action Coast Wrestling into an NWA territory? I don't know. I would be. I don't know about Larson. Let's see here. Nobody says also, what are some of your favorite horror films to watch this time of year? I don't know. I'm not like a huge horror aficionado, but I don't know. I always liked the Human Centipede movies. Those were messed up, man. Let's see here. We'll do just a couple more. Okay, here we go. Hug Nice Man says, I've always been curious about your thumbnail process. Can you walk us through how you appease the YouTube algorithm and how you manage to get such hilarious facial reactions from Larson? So I literally have a file. I just told Larson, hey, send me a file of you making reactions with your face. Just grab those whenever I need a goofy reaction, and I just, do the select image tool, and I do that. For these over here, the algorithm on this YouTube channel likes me just doing this. And then like a thing over here. It's that simple. Like, that's just sort of what it started out with. Some videos did well with it, and now that's what I do. Every once in a while, I'll mix it up. If I go to like a different format at any time, I'll change up the thumbnail. But if it's just going to be me doing this, and I do that kind of shit. So that's how I do that. We'll end on this one. Sabanistic says, since I miss him, and I'm sure many others do as well, what was your favorite enforcer moment? I had so many. I miss him so much. It's been over 5 months now, and I miss him every day. I've got a little picture here that I got from his memorial right here of the enforcer. It just sits here. He looks at me, stares at me all day. I really miss him. I mean, honestly, like, my favorite moments with him, they're too much to count. My on screen, it's either when he won the WrestleMania predictions, or it was the Extreme Cheapskates Smash Zone episode where we watched people like putting lasagna in the dishwasher, or the unsolved mysteries are so good. There are so many amazing unsolved mysteries reaction streams that we did on MF Steve here, where we would just be laughing so very hard. I miss him a lot, and it's not any easier now than it was 5 months ago. I still am really sad and kind of in a state of shock that he's gone. So, yeah. Anyways, on that, I'll bid you adieu. Hope you'll have a good weekend, and we'll see you guys around.